Ever wish you could check your blood pressure, like as easily as you check the time or, how many steps you've walked on your smartwatch?
Mm.
Well, today, we're diving into the world of cuffless blood pressure monitors.
Okay.
Potentially a game changer
Yeah.
for how we think about and manage this vital sign.
Right.
You probably know the basics,
Yes.
systolic over diastolic.
Mm-hmm.
Those two numbers that tell us so much about our health.
Right.
But it might surprise you
Okay.
that both high and low blood pressure can be a cause for concern.
Yeah, that's an important point.
Right.
We need to think about blood pressure as a spectrum.
Yeah, we often hear about hypertension.
Yeah.
But hypotension, low blood pressure, can
Right.
also be a problem,
Yeah.
causing things like dizziness or even fainting.
Exactly.
And it's a global issue.
Huge.
1.28 billion people worldwide are dealing with hypertension.
Wow.
And here's the kicker. More than half of those folks are going untreated.
Yeah, it's a silent killer, they call it.
Now we've got those traditional cuff methods.
Right.
They work, sure,
Mm-hmm.
but let's be honest, those things can be a hassle.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
a pain.
and they really only provide a snapshot of your blood pressure
That's the thing.
at one moment in time.
You only get one little data point.
Like, imagine trying to understand the plot of a movie by
Yeah.
only watching one scene.
Yeah.
You'd miss so much context.
Absolutely.
Exactly. I remember one time at the doctor's office, the cuff squeezed my arm so tight,
Oh, yeah?
I thought I'd need a blood transfusion afterward.
I think we've all been there.
That's why this idea of cuffless blood pressure monitors
Oh, yeah.
is so intriguing.
Totally.
Continuous monitoring could give us a much clearer picture of
Mhm.
what's happening
Right.
throughout the day and night.
Exactly. The whole story.
Okay, so let's talk about how these cuffless devices actually work.
All right.
Is it magic? Are they reading our minds?
Well, not quite. They're actually based on some pretty clever science.
Okay.
It's a bit like trying to figure out what's happening in a soccer stadium just by listening to the crowd's roar. You can't see the players, but you can get a sense of the excitement level, maybe even guess when a goal is scored,
Right.
just from the sound.
Just from those cues.
Exactly.
Okay.
Cuffless monitors work in a similar way.
Interesting.
They measure indirect signals, things like light absorption, electrical activity, or even tiny vibrations,
Wow.
and then use algorithms to estimate blood pressure.
That's a great analogy. Algorithms, estimations.
Mhm.
Does that mean these readings aren't as accurate
That's a good
as
question.
the old school cuff?
It's a valid question, and the answer is a bit nuanced.
Okay.
There are different types of cuffless monitors,
Right.
and some are definitely closer to the gold standard than others.
Hmm.
For instance, the Actia wristband, which uses optical sensors, actually needs to be calibrated against a traditional cuff every so often to ensure accuracy.
So it's like checking in with the, quote, real score every now and then to make sure your interpretation of the crowd noise is on point.
Exactly.
Okay, what about those uncalibrated devices? How do they manage to skip that step?
They rely on some serious computational firepower.
Oh, wow.
Think artificial intelligence and
Oh.
machine learning.
Interesting.
These devices are trained on massive data sets to recognize patterns and make direct blood pressure estimations without needing that separate calibration.
Okay, so we've got these devices that can track our blood pressure continuously, potentially even while we sleep.
Right.
What does that actually mean for us, the everyday folks?
Yeah.
Is this just a cool gadget, or could it actually change how we manage our health?
I think we're talking about a potential paradigm shift here. Imagine a world where you have a constant stream of data about your blood pressure, not just a single reading every few months.
Right.
You could start to see how your lifestyle choices, stress levels, even your sleep quality affect those numbers in real time.
It's like having a personal blood pressure detective working around the clock.
Exactly.
But hold on, could all that data be a bit overwhelming?
That's a valid concern.
Will we all turn into hypochondriacs, constantly obsessing over every little fluctuation?
Yeah, I think that's where education and collaboration with healthcare providers come in.
Okay.
It's not about fixating on every blip, but about recognizing meaningful trends
Right.
and working with your doctor to make adjustments to your lifestyle or medications if needed.
So continuous monitoring could help us fine-tune our health strategies.
Exactly.
But what about those folks who are already dealing with hypertension? How could this technology impact them?
It could be a game changer.
Really?
Imagine being able to catch those dangerous blood pressure spikes early on, potentially preventing a serious health crisis.
Wow.
We're talking about early detection and intervention,
Yeah.
the holy grail of preventative medicine.
Let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the history of all this. I mean, how did we even get to this point where we can measure blood pressure without those clinky cuffs?
But the journey is surprisingly long, dating back nearly 300 years.
Wow.
Picture this. In 1733, a scientist named Stephen Hales measured blood pressure for the first time.
Okay.
He actually inserted a glass tube directly into the artery of a horse.
Whoa. Talk about old school.
Right. Thankfully, we've come a long way since then.
I should hope so.
We went from that rather invasive method to inflatable cuffs,
Right.
and now we're on the cusp of this whole new era of cuffless monitoring.
Wow.
But, as with any emerging technology, there are still some hurdles to clear
Of course.
before it becomes mainstream.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We know that cuffless blood pressure monitors offer the tantalizing promise of continuous data, personalized insights, and potentially even life-saving early detection. But how do these devices actually stack up against the gold standard of traditional cuffs? What are the challenges and ethical considerations we need to keep in mind as this technology evolves? We'll delve deeper into those questions right after this.
Stay tuned. Welcome back.
So we've established that cuffless blood pressure monitoring could really shake things up in the healthcare world.
Yeah, it has a lot of potential.
But like with any new tech,
Right.
there are definitely some questions we need to answer.
Sure.
Accuracy is a big one, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, can these devices really hold a candle to the tried and true cuff?
It all comes down to reliable data,
Right.
especially when we're talking about something as important as blood pressure.
Of course.
And the early research,
Yeah.
it's encouraging.
Okay.
Many studies are showing that these new devices can be just as accurate as traditional cuffs.
But I remember you mentioning
Yeah.
that there isn't a standardized way to validate these devices yet.
Right now, there's no single set of rules
Okay.
for testing and comparing different devices.
So each manufacturer could be doing their own thing.
Essentially, yeah.
Interesting.
Each manufacturer might be using their own methods and algorithms, which makes it tough to know if we're getting a consistent level of accuracy across the board.
So what needs to happen to get everyone on the same page?
We need clear guidelines from the big players,
Okay.
like the FDA in the U.S. and the European Medicines Agency.
Those are the folks that set the standard.
Exactly. They're the ones who set the standards for medical devices.
Gotcha.
Once they establish those guidelines,
Yeah.
we can be more confident that any cuffless monitor on the market meets those rigorous accuracy requirements.
And it's not just about a single accurate reading, right? We're talking about continuous monitoring, which means these devices need to be reliable 24/7.
Exactly. Think about it.
Yeah.
One of the biggest advantages of cuffless monitoring is that we can see how blood pressure changes throughout the day.
Right.
But that data is only useful if we can trust that the device is consistently accurate, no matter what you're doing,
Right.
whether you're exercising, sleeping, or just going about your day.
Okay, but what about individual differences? Could things like skin tone or body composition throw off the readings?
That's another area where we need more research.
Okay.
There's some evidence suggesting that certain types of sensors,
Okay.
like the optical ones used in smartwatches, might be more sensitive to variations in skin pigmentation.
Interesting.
We need to make sure these devices are equally accurate for everyone.
So let's fast forward a bit.
Okay.
Say we solve the accuracy puzzle,
All right.
and these cuffless devices become as reliable as a doctor's visit.
Right.
How would that change things for patients?
That's the big question.
Could this tech actually make a difference in people's lives?
Imagine a world
Yeah.
where people with hypertension can track their blood pressure throughout the day.
Instead of that one reading every few months.
Exactly. Not just during a quick checkup. They can start to see the connections between their lifestyle, their medications, and even their sleep patterns, and how all those factors impact their blood pressure in real time.
It's like taking all the guesswork out of managing your health.
It could empower people to take control of their health in a whole new way.
Interesting.
Patients and their doctors can work together to fine-tune treatment plans.
So it's more of a collaboration.
Right. Making adjustments based on real-time data rather than waiting for the next appointment.
And if we can catch those dangerous blood pressure spikes or dips earlier,
Exactly.
wouldn't that be a huge win for preventative care?
Absolutely. Early detection is key when it comes to preventing serious complications like heart attacks or strokes.
Wow.
Cuffless monitoring could give us a heads up before a problem escalates,
Oh,
allowing for timely intervention.
So it's not just about managing existing hypertension,
Right.
potentially preventing it in the first place.
Exactly. That's the hope.
What a game changer.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff.
But I'm guessing there might be a few downsides to all this data, too.
There are always two sides to the coin.
What are some of the challenges we should be thinking about?
Well, one concern is information overload.
Right. Too much data.
If people are constantly bombarded with blood pressure readings,
Yeah.
it could lead to anxiety or unnecessary trips to the doctor.
So it's not just about collecting the data,
Right.
but about understanding it,
Exactly.
then using it wisely.
We need to educate patients
Okay.
about what constitutes a clinically significant change in blood pressure,
Right. What should they actually worry about?
and when it's appropriate to seek medical attention.
Okay.
And doctors will need guidance on how to interpret all this new data and integrate it into their practice.
So it's a learning curve for everyone.
It is, yeah.
And then there's the whole issue of data privacy and security, right?
Big one.
We're talking about sensitive medical information
Well,
being
well,
transmitted wirelessly.
Data security is paramount. Manufacturers of these devices need to build in robust cybersecurity measures to protect that information.
Okay.
And we need clear regulations around data storage, sharing, and ownership.
It's like the Wild West out there right now.
Yeah.
We've got this incredibly promising technology,
Yeah.
but we need to establish some rules of the road to make sure it's used responsibly and ethically.
I completely agree.
We also need to be mindful of access and affordability.
For sure.
We don't want to create a system where only those who can afford the latest gadgets benefit from this technology.
That's a great point.
Right. We need to make sure that everyone who needs it can benefit from this innovation,
Absolutely.
regardless of their income or background.
So while the future of cuffless blood pressure monitoring is exciting,
Yeah, it sounds like it.
we need to proceed thoughtfully.
I think that's a good takeaway from all of this.
What are your thoughts on where this technology is headed in the next few years?
Well, I'm no fortune teller,
Uh-huh.
but it seems like we're on the verge of a revolution in how we manage our health.
I think so too.
As the technology gets more sophisticated,
Right.
I think we'll see these devices become even more accurate, reliable, and user-friendly.
I agree.
And with sensors becoming increasingly integrated into everyday devices like smartwatches and smartphones,
Uh-huh.
I could see blood pressure monitoring becoming as routine as checking the time or your step count.
Yeah. I think that's a very real possibility.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is. But remember, technology is just one part of the equation.
Right.
We also need strong research, clear guidelines, and effective patient education to make sure this innovation reaches its full potential and truly improves heart health for everyone.
It sounds like there's a lot to be excited about, but also a lot of work to be done
So it's a journey.
to make sure this technology benefits everyone.
But the potential is there
Yeah.
to transform healthcare as we know it.
I'm excited to see where it goes.
Me too.
And now, let's take a closer look at some of the most innovative developments in this field and what the future might hold for cuffless blood pressure monitoring. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been exploring this incredible world of cuffless blood pressure monitors.
Yeah.
The science, the potential benefits, some of the hurdles we still need to overcome.
Right.
But now let's get to the really fun stuff. The cutting-edge innovations.
Okay.
That sound like they're straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It is pretty wild.
You're telling me, we touched on this earlier, but I have to hear more about it using a smartphone camera
Oh, yeah.
to measure blood pressure just by analyzing someone's face.
Right.
How is that even possible?
It might sound like magic,
Yeah, it does.
but it's actually based on some really subtle physiology.
Okay.
Researchers have discovered that with each heartbeat,
Uh-huh.
there are tiny, almost imperceptible color changes in our skin.
Interesting.
By analyzing these subtle variations using sophisticated algorithms,
Okay.
we can actually estimate blood pressure without any physical contact.
Okay, that's officially blowing my mind.
It's pretty cool.
And what about those rings that can measure blood pressure?
Right.
Are those just a gimmick?
That's a good question.
Or is there real science behind them?
There's some really interesting science at play there.
Okay.
Some of these rings use a technique called volume clamp plethysmography.
Wow, say that 5 times fast.
I know, right?
So what does that even mean?
Essentially, they gently apply pressure to your finger
Okay.
at regular intervals,
Right.
causing slight changes in blood volume.
So it's sensing that.
Exactly.
Okay.
By analyzing these fluctuations, the ring can estimate your blood pressure.
So it's like having a miniature blood pressure cuff
Yeah,
built right into a piece of jewelry.
exactly.
That's wild.
Yeah.
What other innovations are on the horizon that have you particularly excited?
One area that I'm really watching closely
Okay.
is the use of ultrasound technology.
Interesting.
We're starting to see devices that use ultrasound waves to create detailed images of the arteries and measure blood flow velocity.
Wow, so they can actually see
Yeah.
what's happening.
Exactly. This could give us even more precise and personalized blood pressure assessments.
It's like having a portable ultrasound machine
Right.
on your wrist.
Pretty much.
What's not to be excited about?
And because ultrasound is non-invasive and painless,
Right.
it's a great candidate for continuous monitoring.
It's incredible to think about how far we've come from sticking glass tubes into horses to using smartphones and rings to measure blood pressure.
It's crazy.
It's been quite a journey.
It really speaks to human ingenuity and our desire to find better ways to manage our health.
So let's put on our futuristic thinking caps for a moment.
Okay.
What does the future hold for cuffless blood pressure monitoring?
That's the big question.
Where do you see this technology going in the next decade or so?
I think we're on the cusp of a world where continuous health monitoring becomes the norm, not the exception.
Interesting.
Imagine wearable sensors that seamlessly track not just our blood pressure, but also our heart rate, sleep patterns, activity levels, even blood glucose levels.
Wow.
All of this data flowing right to our fingertips.
It's like having a personalized health dashboard.
Right.
Giving us real-time insights into how our bodies are functioning.
Exactly. And with the power of artificial intelligence, we could analyze all of this data to identify patterns, predict potential health risks, and even recommend personalized interventions before problems arise.
It sounds like something out of a science fiction novel.
It does a little bit.
But it also raises some important questions.
Oh, of course.
What happens to all of this data?
Right.
Who has access to it? And how do we ensure privacy and security in this brave new world
That's the key.
of constant monitoring?
Those are crucial considerations. We need to find the right balance between harnessing the power of data for good while protecting individual privacy and autonomy.
Right. It's a powerful tool, but we need to make sure it's used responsibly.
Absolutely. That means robust regulations, transparent data governance frameworks, and secure technologies.
So we've got this incredible opportunity to revolutionize healthcare with continuous monitoring and personalized insights. But we need to proceed thoughtfully and ethically to make sure these advances benefit everyone and don't create unintended consequences.
Absolutely. Technology should always be a force for good.
Right.
And in the case of cuffless blood pressure monitoring, the potential is there to empower individuals to take control of their health, prevent serious complications, and ultimately live longer, healthier lives.
Well, there you have it, a deep dive into the fascinating and ever-evolving world of cuffless blood pressure monitors.
It's been a great conversation.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the basic science to the mind-blowing innovations and the ethical considerations that come with any game-changing technology.
Yeah, a lot to think about.
We hope you've enjoyed the journey as much as we have.
And as always, we encourage you to stay curious, keep learning, and engage in thoughtful conversations about how technology can shape the future of healthcare.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, stay healthy and keep exploring.